Good morning and welcome to Health Talk here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX. I'm Paul Thomas and he's Bill Kearney, and we survived the 4th of July. And was it a great holiday for you and your family? I know Dana's birthday over the weekend, or on the 4th.
Yes, yesterday we had I think 14 people staying with us. We went out on Sunday night to see the fireworks over by the casino, and there's so many boats out there on the 4th of July. I just didn't want to. We could see them from our house, but not anything like you can. So I guess it was a good presentation last night, and
it was good. Yeah, we kind of watched it from not a total distance, but we weren't right up under it, and it was a good show.
Yeah, it was a busy weekend. There was a lot going on. We were going to try to make it up for the cardboard boat races.
I saw the end of it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, the kids did well. So that's what we saw the end of. I don't know how many classes there were, but if there were any, but we saw the end of one race, and only one boat sank that we saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This little girl that she was in kind of a squarish looking boat. Some of them were really well done. I mean, there was one out there that looked like kind of like a catamaran that had two boats connected by a middle part and a sail up the middle and kids on each side. And,
really?
Yeah, and a couple of the boats, there were like 3-4 kids in a boat.
Whoa.
So they were really well made, and then this one girl got down one length of the course, and she was trying to paddle, and the front end just kind of caught some water, and then that was it.
Yeah.
She went in. So, but that was very, very cool to see that.
Well, my son-in-law brought a couple of kayaks, and he wanted to go out fishing, and I says, you don't want me to, just getting in the kayak is a tip-over for me,
Sure, yeah.
And getting out is a tip-over.
Yeah.
He went out about 3 or 4 times and took a little fishing rod and got a couple of crappie. And,
oh, cool.
It was... then he wanted to take the kids out. When he took the kids out, of course, they never even got a bite. But it was a beautiful weekend, and it was we had people dropping by all day yesterday because of Dana's birthday, and so we entertained. We cooked a 22-pound turkey and 3 tri-tips and
wow.
40 those potatoes that are twice baked, and watermelon and cantaloupe and corn, and everything you could think of.
Oh,
so
sure, yeah.
it was a busy day for me.
Yep.
And by 9:30 I said, I've just got to lay down, and I could. With my one of my daughters had a beagle, and he did not like the fireworks. So
our dog last night didn't like it either.
Just as I laid down, the door opens, and here comes this big beagle and jumping on the bed and saying,
"You got a friend for
saying,
a while."
"Grandpa, take care of me." So, and then every 5 minutes, somebody from his family came in to make sure he was okay. So I didn't get that sleep that I really counted on getting. But it was a good weekend, and hopefully everybody. There was a lot of boats on the lake during the week, and a lot of people left yesterday morning that had come up from other areas because I'm sure they had to go to work today. And it was good to see the lake get that much activity. But we have a lot to talk about the heat and about many things involving your health, and one's how to keep your heart healthy in the summer heat. Another one is about white wine, how it's putting you at risk for a scary type of cancer. This is completely unbeknownst to me. I just downloaded it this morning off the New York Times about white wine putting you at risk. Alzheimer's disease that's probably going to bankrupt Medicare. We will talk about that. And a new microneedle patch that could one day replace flu shots that you can put on yourself. How shingles can increase the risk of a heart attack and stroke. And many more things. So we have a busy day. Excuse me. To talk about everything, and of course the first one is the summer heat. It's hot out there, and I know that if you're spending the time outside, sunburn shouldn't be your only concern. It's important to think about heart health, especially with this population, because it's an older population, and steamy weather can be dangerous for older individuals and people with heart disease and those taking certain medications for conditions like high blood pressure and depression. It can even be a risk for otherwise healthy people if they don't take some precautions. So one of my grandsons is in Madison, Wisconsin at a wrestling camp, and it is very hot there and very humid, and this is like a boot camp. If you ever went to basic training in the military, and he's only 15 years old, and it's extremely, they don't care if you're hurt, they don't care if you're exhausted, they don't care if you're overheated. You have to show that you're a man, even at 15 years old. So even athletes can be really vulnerable to this heat. You have to take things slower in the heat. It doesn't mean that you're less fit, but in this kind of a camp, it does, they try to convince you that it is that you're less fit and you need to keep going. On hot, sticky days like these, and we don't have the stickiness that they have back in the Midwest, our hearts need to pump harder to initiate the sweating response. Now, sweating is the part of our body that cools you, that for people who already have a weakened heart, that extra pumping can cause stress on your heart or your cardiovascular system. The worst effects occur during heat waves. Just as an example, 700 deaths were attributed to the 1995 heat wave in Chicago, with 39% of the deceased having prior heart conditions. Part of the National Institute of Health and brought up these statistics, and also during Europe's heat wave in 2003, people with cardiovascular disease had mortality rates 30% higher. Hot weather and heart disease can really be a deadly combination. It doesn't have to be unless when you realize what you have to do. If a heart has been damaged from a heart attack, and many times it does, and what happens with a heart attack is one of your arteries clog up and a clot forms, and it may not be able to pump enough blood to cool the body off. So this is especially true if arteries are narrowed by cholesterol and plaque, which in the daily workings, and that's one of the things that we try to inform diabetics about, people with cardiovascular disease. Cholesterol and plaques form in those blood vessels. When they form in those blood vessels, they make the diameter of the blood vessels smaller, and when that happens, the heart has to work harder to pump the blood through. Our number is 263-5252 if you have any questions about what we're talking about, 263-5252. These symptoms from the heart working so hard, when a person's body fails to cool itself, you get fatigue and nausea, headache, dizziness, many times muscle twitching and confusion. If those symptoms progress, they can lead to a heat stroke, which means a person's core temperature rises above 104 degrees. Complications to the central nervous system, at that point you could have organ failure, and it becomes a medical emergency. This is quite dangerous. With age, that plaque often builds up in the arteries, causing them to become more stiff. And if you're older or elderly, depending on what that is, what age that is, over 60 or even 50, you may not feel as thirsty in the heat. The body doesn't recognize signs that you need to hydrate. And I briefly mentioned on Father's Day when we were out in the boat and had tied up with other groups of people, and we thought we were hydrating, but I weighed 185 pounds when I went out there. When I came back, I weighed 175. So during heat exhaustion, the blood pressure drops, which can be dangerous, and a lot of that's because you're dehydrated, because it can cause people to become unsteady and even to faint. And then if you're on medications for high blood pressure, you need to be extra careful, because those drugs can cause the body to have a reaction to the hot weather. We've talked about photosensitivity. Remember us talking about drugs that would cause you to get a rash, and we talked about hydrochlorothiazide. Last week was a very small strength, but it still caused people to have really bad sunburns when they were out in the sun. diuretics like Maxide, hydrochlorothiazide. Those drugs also help flush the system, but when they do that, they can also cause dehydration, meaning you're not getting enough fluid. Other classes of drugs that affect the system, that cools your body, are antihistamines and antidepressants. In the summer, people can feel unwell if they're on certain of those medications because of the heat intensifying also. And then the dehydration, which occurs when you don't have enough fluid, is one of the main causes of heat exhaustion. And that causes the blood volume to drop, meaning the heart can't fill properly and pump blood to the body's organs. In the extreme cases, they will not have enough blood to function properly. So it all becomes a complex pattern of really getting informed and taking care of yourself. In really serious cases, a person would need to get fluids IV, and that happens many times with people with heat stroke. You get them in, you call 911, they're unresponsive, you get in and you hydrate them. And many times, just with diarrhea or the flu, you can get the same kind of symptoms, and they will have to put an IV in you to bring your body liquid up to the place where you're not dehydrated anymore. It's common and can be reversed by drinking fluids in 95 to 100 degree heat, which we've been having recently. We all lose more fluid. People don't recognize they're losing fluid even through their breathing. If they're just sitting by the pool, your breath has droplets of fluid. The air takes away the fluid from the skin. And it's important to replace sodium and potassium and magnesium and other electrolytes to keep your heart healthy. Electrolytes add bodily functions such as regulating your heartbeat and helping your muscles contract. And it's strange as you begin to age, and many of your friends are in the same age group you are, the things you start talking about when something goes wrong, about what we could do to alleviate our risks. When your regulatory system and your like potassium and magnesium and other electrolytes are low, that happens when the body doesn't have enough fluid and it becomes taxed, meaning stressed out. The system is even in more stress, and the heart and blood vessels are in more stress. So drink, be proactive. Drinking water is important. Drink to thirst. Don't gulp fluids. You're not going to feel very well. I mean, any of you who have played sports and you or watch sports on television, and you see people that come to the sidelines and take water, they're not taking big gulps. A lot of them take water and swish it around and spit it out. Avoid too much caffeine and alcohol. Stress is going to cause a lot of problems with your heat exhaustion. Dress for heat, wear lightweight clothes, light colors, breathable fabrics. Same thing we tell you about getting sunburn. Between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. are when the rays are the most intense. And I had people yesterday that wanted to get tan, that didn't have much tan, and laid out specifically between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and just for that purpose to get burned. And I had a little grandson who, and we put sunscreen on him, but he was in the pool all day, and you have to keep reapplying these SPF 15s, 30s, 45s, 60s, 85s every 2 hours if you're in the water. And your heart has to work harder to dissipate the heat. Healthier people are better at adapting, but people should go a little slower during the hot summer months. It isn't difficult to just be working around the yard and lose 5 or 6 pounds by excessive sweating and dehydrating. So it's critical to pay attention to what your body's telling you. You know, your body's not stupid. They know when something isn't right, and they will give you signs that say you have a problem here and you better slow down. And when you slow down, you start evaluating what's going on with your body and see if you can figure out what it is. And if you can't and you continue to feel worse, talk to your wife or husband or relative that's around and tell them how you're feeling and see if they can help evaluate it. And if it gets to the far end of the spectrum, call 911, because Heat stroke and heat exhaustion are very dangerous things to have. You think sunburn is the most dangerous, but not compared to those two things. 263-5252 if you want to call and ask about anything we're talking about or a question that you might have with your medication, certainly feel free to call. This was a new one that I got today, and I'd never heard of this before. And I know a lot of people drink white wine because they get a headache and a bad taste in their mouth and a burning stomach from taking red wine, which we know is healthy for you up to a certain point, a glass or two a day. A bottle or two a day probably isn't too good. But white wine now is causing a risk of melanoma. We all know how relaxing it is to sit back and relax with a tall glass of wine at the end of the long day, but that could be putting you at risk for one of the most deadly forms of cancer out there. We know alcohol has been associated with many types of cancer in the past. About 4% or 3.6 worldwide have been determined to be caused, cancer cases have been determined to be caused by drinking too much alcohol. And that's due to a carcinogen. And a carcinogen is a chemical that has a tendency to let cancer cells grow rapidly. But there's carcinogens found in alcohol, and the main one is acetaldehyde, which damages the DNA, and that keeps the cell from repairing itself. But a recent study of researchers at Brown University that was published in the Cancer Epidemiology, Biomarkers, and Prevention found a direct, and this is a direct connection between white wine in particular and melanoma. It didn't say what kind of white wine because they all have this carcinogen in it, and they found a connection with the melanoma, which is the deadliest type of skin cancer, and I see more and more of it today. And what we relate it to, especially with the baby boomers, are when we grew up 70 years ago or 65 years ago or 60 years ago, we were using baby oil as a tanning ingredient, and then they put iodine in it so you could get tan quicker, and people would get huge sunburns and blister like crazy and then rub the blisters off and go out and get more sun. Most people know melanoma to be caused by sun exposure, but surprisingly, this study found that subjects developed melanoma primarily on the trunks of their bodies, a part that's usually covered by clothing and not exposed to the sun. The physician, Dr. Cho, was a co-author of this study that believes that the DNA damage aspect of carcinogen is more related to the kind of disease found in the study. Based on those findings, you might guess this type of cancer is related to sun exposure, is not related to sun exposure, and more related to the alcohol damaging DNA or preventing that from repair. In addition, a 13% higher risk of melanoma. Other individuals' drinks did not produce that same kind of trend. And there's been a lot of research to suggest wine has a higher acetaldehyde content than other alcoholic drinks, and since red wine has more antioxidants, and the antioxidants are cancer-fighting medications that white wine don't have, and that may offset a lot of the carcinogenic effects, the cancer effects. The proven relationship between alcohol consumption and cancer and the need for further research on its link to skin cancer in particular is very important. But in generalizations, this study would say that alcohol in general is related, and I would emphasize that white wine is particularly related. There are many limiting factors in this study, which they are in many, and it's not as large a study as I would like to see because, you know, I'm a fan of the more people we have in it and the more specifics as far as guidelines go, the more accurate the result is going to be. First of all, this was conducted only on white people. It didn't take into consideration their sunscreen use and habits. It was purely observational, which means it could not provide a conclusive correlation or ending, just a suggestive relationship. It's also worth noting that melanoma is almost always curable if it's caught early. But I don't know how many I know in the last 10 years that when they caught melanoma, it was in stage 4 already. And the slightest sign that the melanoma was there, but it doesn't take much with cancer. It's such a fast-growing form of like leukemia is in many people. So the American Cancer Society has recommendations for at-risk people to limit their alcohol consumption in place, and they've had that for years. There are many risk factors for melanoma that you can't change with many forms of cancer. Family history, hair color, susceptibility to sunburn, but drinking alcohol is something you can change, so it's actually good to know that it's related to melanoma as well as other cancers. So, you know, I can't tell you how many times that we've talked about the relationship of alcohol and many different kinds of cancer, and the risk involved with the more you drink, the more you're susceptible to something. I had a friend that was a friend of my wife's sister and her husband, and he was a beer drinker and would drink probably a 12 to a 24 pack of beer a day and never acted like he was drunk. But he died very early in his life of cancer because of the alcoholism. So it doesn't make any difference what the alcohol is you're drinking when it comes to just many, many forms of cancer. In this link, of course, they're talking about the link with white wines and a 13% higher risk of having melanoma, the most fatal cancer there is, by drinking red wine. The amount of red wine, whether it's more than, remember, these were restricted things. There weren't guidelines. They didn't know if they were using sunscreens. They didn't know, and they were all white. Whether that all makes a difference, we don't know. But it's a question out there that we've never heard before, or I've never heard before, and I've certainly not reported on it before. That makes it one of the new things that we have to be questioned about, and it's been something that it seems like every time that we have the show, we have new things that we have to tell you about, that this is going to cause this. This is, whether it's the cost of drugs, whether it's the combination of drugs, whether it's alcohol or some other form of medication, or we had it for, the FDA approved it for one medication for one diagnosis, and now they're using it for multiple diagnoses. It's unbelievable to keep up with all of that, and we're doing our best to keep you up with this show. So hopefully there will be some information that's helpful to you. Before we take a break, a new thing came out in the Business Insider yesterday about a pain-free microneedle patch that could one day replace flu shots. It's an experimental patch that could one day replace the annual flu shot. Unlike other vaccines, they only need to be taken once in a lifetime. This has to be taken annually, so it's recommended people get a flu shot every year. The difference is not everyone gets it, and according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, only 37% of the United States adults had gotten flu shots by November of last year, and the virus is still deadly. You don't think about people dying of flu, but Worldwide Health Organization estimates from 250,000 to 500,000 people a year die from flu. That's up to 500,000 people. So in an effort to make the treatment more widely used, they're trying to explore the possibility of using a patch that's covered in tiny needles to deliver a flu vaccine through the skin instead of using a shot. And in a trial, again, a small trial of 100 people that was published Tuesday, found the patch to be safe in humans and that could generate an antibody response, which is the key for fighting off the flu virus. As a bonus, people who need the vaccine can apply the patch themselves, potentially allowing them to skip the doctor's office or clinic. In spite of that recommendation of universal flu vaccine, it still continues to be a major cause of illness, leading to significant deaths. Having the option of a flu vaccine that can be easily and painlessly self-administered by yourself could be an important support in getting that on the market and to see how good it works. And here's how it works. This patch contains tiny needles, so tiny that they're virtually painless. And they're filled with vaccine, and it's stuck onto the skin, and once it's on the skin, the vaccine can enter the body, preparing the body to fight off the flu virus. The microneedles, these tiny needles that are in this patch, then dissolve, and the patch can be removed. So these are needles so small that you can't see them, and they eventually dissolve in your skin. That way, there are no sharp objects to dispose of, as there would be with a flu shot, making it easier for people to put the patch on themselves. They're increasingly popular experimental method for replacing treatments typically given with needles. The researchers are investigating microneedle patches as alternative to injections for everything from cancer drugs to insulin for those people with diabetes. Not good for pharmacy, because that's one of our additions that pharmacists now do, is giving vaccinations. For the flu vaccine, this was the first time the patch was used in humans. Before it can be approved, it will need to go through more testing to determine how well it can protect against the flu. They hope to have a kickoff, a later stage trial that would involve more people soon. Beyond that, the team at Emory, who's the one that's initiating this, is exploring whether the patch could be used to vaccinate against polio, measles, and rubella. So here we continue to progress. We continue to put new things on the market. We continue to make it easier for you to take care of your own health, because it's becoming so expensive and so important that we kind of forget about what the cost is going to be, and so then when we find out, we choose not to do it. And we're going to talk when we come back about one of those things that's extremely important, and people fail to get this shot many times because it's too expensive or their insurance doesn't pay for it. Are you one of those people who wait until you get out on the lake or around the pool to put on sunscreen? Hi, my name is Bill Kearney, pharmacist and owner of Northlake Medical Pharmacies in Lakeport. Don't be afraid of the sun, but change your habits so you can enjoy it without putting yourself at risk. Apply sunscreen 20 to 30 minutes before you go outside, and apply it liberally. Most of us try to get by with less, a lot less, and most of us use a third to a half as much sunscreen as needed. An ounce shot glass is enough for a typical adult if applied correctly. You need to apply it every 2 hours in the water, and remember the sun rays are the most intense between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you need sunscreen or you get a sunburn by not following these suggestions, come to Northlake Medical Pharmacies and we will take care of you. Northlake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations, on Hill Road East next to Sutter Lakeside Hospital, or outside the Bruno Shop Smart in Lakeport.
This is the Caltrans Road Information Bulletin for Lake and Mendocino County State Highways for the week beginning Friday, June 30th. In Lake County on Route 20 near Glen Haven Drive on the 5th, the company could cause 5-minute delays. And on Route 175 near Forest Lake Road, expect 15-minute delays. In Mendocino County on Route 1 near Albion beginning the 5th, expect 10-minute delays weekdays. And also expect 5-minute delays north of the Westport North Bridge and south of the Wages Creek Bridge. On Highway 101 from Long Valley Creek to the Empire Camp Rest area, expect 5-minute overnight delays weeknights. Near the Hermitage Vista Point, expect 10-minute delays. And north of Leggett, expect up to 20-minute delays. On Route 128 west of Yorkville, expect 5-minute delays. On Route 162 near Sandbank Creek, expect 5-minute delays. On 175 near the Lake County line, expect 30-minute delays. And on Route 253 near Singley Cattle Pass, expect 15-minute delays weekdays. That concludes the bulletin. Like us on Facebook for more updates. That's Caltrans District 1.
Family Resource Center Early Head Start is a federally funded program that provides many services and resources to low-income families with children ages 0 to 3 and expectant mothers, and includes comprehensive child development programs, prenatal education, links to birthing classes, parent involvement activities, family fun days, and comprehensive family services. The Lake Family Resource Center Early Head Start program welcomes families from all cultural backgrounds to participate, including families with children who have special needs. Call 279-0563.
Raising your family, tending to your animals, growing your own produce, preparing for the seasons, living the country life. Hi, I'm Jody Henke, host of Living the Country Life. Catch me every Monday through Friday at 9:35 a.m. and 4:35 p.m. for ideas and inspiration for your place in the country. That's Living the Country Life here on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX.
We bring the community closer together, supporting business in every way. We're helping make your dreams come true, working hard for you. Lake County Chamber of Commerce, join today, it pays to belong.
The Lake County Chamber of Commerce would like to recognize the Member of the Month, Orchid Realty. Sam Orchid, broker-owner, has been in business for over 40 years in Napa and Lake counties, and his expertise will benefit you in buying your next home. For your next real estate transaction, call 486-1646.
Lake County Chamber of Commerce, join today, it pays to belong. Lake County Chamber of Commerce, we're steady and strong, help us shape the future.
All right, we're back.
We are back, and I thought I'd have a quiz for Paul, but neither one of us were up to doing the preparation for it. So
It was a long 4th of July.
yeah, he was afraid he was not going to be
After the last one, I didn't. My record's not so great.
It wasn't too bad, I was amazed that you got 50% almost. Maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we just said before the break that there was a type of immunization that people aren't getting because they think it's too expensive. I don't know that anybody is less expensive than we are. We're around $220, something like that, for a shingles shot. It's Zostavax. But most Medicare D plans pay for it, which is what most people that need the shot have. And a lot of insurances that aren't D plans, aren't Medicare, pay for it also. And Partnership Health pays for it. So getting shingles may increase the risk of a heart attack or stroke or other heart problems by as much as 40%. And this was done by a research center in Seoul. And I just had the people call me from Merck Sharp and Dohme, which are the manufacturers of Zostavax. And I talked to them about whether or not we needed to get a booster shot because the 6 or 8 year limit on the effectiveness of the shot has passed. And they said absolutely not. We're still working on another one that will not be a live virus that we can immunize people with. That should be out. I thought it would be out by now. But vaccinations can help prevent shingles, which is caused by the herpes zoster virus. That's the same one that causes chickenpox. Individuals that are at risk should talk with doctors about preventing shingles. Merck, the company that manufactures it, recommended getting the shot in the 50s. The Food and Drug, as far as the age goes, the Food and Drug Administration has said 60, and CDC has said 60. Now, some insurance companies are paying for it when you're between the ages of 50 and 60. So the only thing that I would caution you with is the strength of that is probably going to diminish as time goes on. So there's nothing saying that you can't get shingles when you're 30 years old. but they do advise not getting it before age 60. The health people do. Of course, the manufacturer who's selling the vaccine says you should get it when you're 50 years old, but whether your insurance will pay for it or not. They analyzed the medical records of more than 23,000 shingles patients. This is more like what I like to hear. Between 2003 and 2013, and compared them with the same number of patients who didn't get shingles. People who got shingles were more likely to be female, have common heart risk factors such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, being older. They also were less likely to smoke, and they drank less alcohol, got more exercise, and were in higher socioeconomic states, according to the report in the American College of Cardiology. So after adjusting for those and other factors that could influence the risk of heart problems and stroke, they found that overall having shingles was associated with a 41% increased risk of any heart-related problem, 35% increased risk of stroke, and a 59% increase of a heart attack. The odds of stroke were especially high in people age 40 or older, whose risk was 3.75 times that of peers without a history of shingles. The risk for both stroke and heart attack were also highest in the first year after the onset of shingles and dropped over time. I will tell you, and you've heard me mention this many times if you are a regular listener, my sister, who lives back in Nebraska, has had it for 7 years, and she can't get well enough to get the herpes shot, and she's now had a stroke because of having the herpes. Recovered, but not 100% recovered, and still has the virus in her. So the Dr. Schwamm, who's the vice chair of neurology at Massachusetts General in Boston, suggested that inflammation plays a role. We've known for a long time there's an interaction between inflammation and clotting. So when someone gets shingles, the virus may move through the skin and directly attack and inflame the blood vessels, as well as certain nerves. Inflamed blood vessels, of course, may cause blood to clot, setting the stage for a heart attack or stroke. The inflammation of nerves can cause the severe pain that's caused post-herpetic neuralgia that often accompanies shingles. And I'm telling you, people, that is the most painful thing you will ever have in your life. The nerve endings, a rash forms, and the nerve endings come to the surface of the skin. And they're exposed. They aren't encapsulated to protect them. They're exposed like a root canal. And when a blouse or a shirt touches it or air hits it, it puts you in the most severe pain you've ever had. And there's no way really to treat shingles, which will reduce the risk. The study has some limitations, as most of these do. They have undocumented differences between patients in two groups, as well as difference in shingles severity among those who got the disease. In addition, the incidence of shingles in people under 65 is much higher in the study than in the U.S., so the findings may not hold true here. All we know is that it's a very, very painful disease, and anything you can do to make it less painful or less susceptible to getting it. The effect rate of the vaccine is between 60 and 80%. You may not think that's good enough. You may think it should be 100. There isn't any vaccine that's 100% effective. But in the United States, the shingles rate in people under 40 are expected to fall because so many people were vaccinated for chickenpox as children, and low in those who had the chickenpox vaccine. So as for the shingles vaccine, it not only helps prevent the condition in people over 60, it may prevent a reoccurrence in those who've already had shingles. And we have given plenty of people immunizations that have had shingles in the past. So even people who've already had shingles should get the vaccine. Regarding the heart attack and stroke risks, they stress that following a healthy lifestyle is the best way to lower risks. Same thing, diet and exercise, and low cholesterol, low blood sugar, and not put yourself at risk. Now, the vaccine is given under the skin, subcutaneously. Very few side effects from that medication. It is a frozen vaccine. So if you call us and tell us, and you don't need a prescription, pharmacists are able to write the prescription for you, and the insurance company pays for it. If your insurance, you don't have to go see a physician to get a prescription for almost any immunization. You can come right into the pharmacy. You don't need an appointment. But the reason that we need to know your insurance pays for it before we mix it, so you may wonder why there's this time frame in between you came in, we ran your prescription, or we got your prescription, we had to run it to make sure what the copay was to you, and then I go mix it up. And once it's mixed up, it only lasts for 30 minutes. So we would lose around $225 if, in fact, your insurance didn't pay for it and said, we need you to pay for the medication, and it was too expensive for you, and you couldn't do it. So we always wait till we can tell you what your cost is going to be before giving you the shot. So if there's a little time frame in between the fact that we said your insurance pays for it and before the old pharmacist gets the vaccine out of the refrigerator and adds sterile water for injection and then transfers it to a syringe and then reviews your file to make sure that you don't have any conflict by taking it, then we go ahead and give you the shot. Maybe a little bit of erythema or redness around the site where we give you the shot, even though it's not into the muscle, it's just into the skin. Very few people have had any reaction to it, but I've had people that have had 2 or 3 days that it had swollen up and thought they were having a reaction to the shot. The only reaction you're getting from the immunization is from the needle sticking in your skin. It has nothing to do with what we're injecting into you unless you are allergic to it. So, and most people have not been. Alzheimer's disease. That's becoming closer and closer to us as we age. Every 66 seconds this year, an American will develop Alzheimer's disease, according to the information that was released on Tuesday. By 2050, an American will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's every 33 seconds. So caregivers provide over 18 billion hours of unpaid assistance, and Alzheimer's research dollars are not enough to find treatments or a cure. By the year 2050, you know, that sounds like it's a long ways away. It's not. The number's expected to double to 1 every 33 seconds. Those startling figures are mirrored worldwide. In 2016, the World Alzheimer's Report estimated that 47 million people around the globe had dementia. Now, dementia is a stage that you go into many times before you get Alzheimer's. To put it into perspective, it's a bit more than the current population of Spain. And because 9 of 10 people with dementia in low and middle income countries, and half of those in high income countries are not diagnosed, the global number of people diagnosed is expected to triple by 2050. You kind of wonder, you know, what's driving those numbers. Is there no disease-modifying treatment? And by those, we're talking about things that people are taking for rheumatoid arthritis that don't cure the disease but modify it so it's not as progressive. No prevention, no cure. And while deaths in the United States from Alzheimer's have doubled in the last 15 years, an increase of 89% deaths from other major diseases has been declining. So, for example, deaths from heart disease, the number one killer of Americans, had declined by 14% over the same period, while HIV deaths have dropped by 54%, strokes by 21%, cancer deaths by 9%, and we're seeing Alzheimer's increase substantially and tripling. Other diseases have declined because of significant investments in research that produce treatments and techniques to reduce the risk, sometimes even a cure. A lot of money is going into trying to find out, and this isn't any new information. We knew this was going to happen. With baby boomers becoming of age, people living longer, but experts have pointed out that without extra funding and a breakthrough in Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's could be the disease that breaks the nation's health bank. For 2017, for the first time, total costs for caring for those living with Alzheimer's and dementia hit $259 billion, over $250 billion. It consumes 1 in every 5 Medicaid dollars, with this will go into 1 in 3, perhaps the next decade, that will get Alzheimer's, at which point they'll single-handedly collapse Medicare and Medicaid. It will also impact the workforce and our economy, and that's not so much by the patient who has Alzheimer's. It's because every family member will be making caregiving choices. They will have a home. They will be absent more for doctor's visits and more other caregiving activities. There's more. The association report adds another startling statistics in the hidden cost of caregiving. In 2016, those who took care of loved ones with dementia provided an estimated 18.2 billion hours of unpaid assistance, a contribution to the nation valued at $230.1 billion. And that's just the moderate impact of caregiving. No one can put a number on the emotional and the health impact of caring for a loved one with dementia. Just to imagine how difficult it would be to visit your loved one in a skilled nursing facility or even in your home, and you would walk in the room and they'd say, "Who are you?" "Well, I'm your wife." And, "No, you're not." "Yes, I am your wife." "You don't look like my wife." "Well, that's my wife." If you're my wife, you're having an affair on me." "No, I'm not. I'm here every day." "No, you never come." All these are things that can happen with somebody with Alzheimer and dementia. Now, they can remember many times very pointedly what was 20 years ago, but not what is happening right now. We have to both bail like mad and fix the leaks. Researchers are working hard to fix the leaks. Researchers are taking a long time. It will take time. For now, the main load is carried by the bailing caregivers, and they're on the front lines in this war. One of the gals that's fighting on the front lines, she and her brother Doug are caring for their 78-year-old father, who was diagnosed about 10 years ago. He was a lifer in the Air Force, a colonel, a fighter pilot, a Vietnam veteran. Their mom was a proper military wife, and between them, they had a don't ask, don't tell attitude about informing us about his illness. It wasn't until they took over their dad's care that they learned just what their mother had been going through. He developed a sense of paranoia and was using everything against them. Everybody was out to get him, he thought, and he believed that. He would go to bed early, but then get up and was up all night arguing with their mom. They would have conversations and arguments over and over again. She wasn't getting any sleep. She was exhausted with the constant care and pressure, but she never complained. She didn't want the kids to be scared. But in 2012, after 5 years of caregiving, she dropped dead of a heart attack. They say she died of a broken heart and died from the stress of caring for him. She was eating supper, super healthy foods, walking every day, taking very good care of herself. So they truly believe it was stress. It was awful, the daughter said, and my brother and I feel so guilty because we could have supported her earlier, but she wouldn't ask for help. She would not consider moving him into a facility. She would not go to support groups. Today, the kids work with the Alzheimer's Association to call attention to the burden of caregiving. Their mom was the glue of the family, a sweet and amazing person. It's painful, really painful. And we collectively, as a nation, need to step up because Alzheimer's is an epidemic and our healthcare system is not set to support caregivers. Every time we lose a patient from dementia or Alzheimer's, or a patient that's been hospitalized and had a stroke and whatever, and we talk to the patient's next of kin that were doing the caregiving, and we said, how are you doing? Because they're so often forgotten. And in this disease, it goes on forever. And the cost of Alzheimer's, including caregiving, is a reality that will affect all of us. A lot of people think that Alzheimer's doesn't affect you because you're not old or you don't have it in the family or it's really not your problem. But what you have to understand is you have a brain, and if you have a brain, you have a risk for Alzheimer's disease. If we all live to age 85, and for me that's 10 more years, and who doesn't hope to live at least that long? Almost half of us will have Alzheimer's disease. The other half will be caregivers. No one is immune. An escape from daily life is almost impossible. So we're all at risk. The more you age, the more you realize you're at risk. You find yourself testing yourself all day to make sure that you aren't losing it. And as we age, we misplace things, and we aren't as quick as we used to be to answer questions, and sometimes we forget people's names. And that's just part of the aging process. When you don't know how to get to your house or get to your doctor's office or who your doctor is or recognize your spouse, that's something more serious. And one of the problems that we have is medications. And we had medications that will take people with Alzheimer's back about 6 months. It takes a long time for a family to realize that their next of kin, their father, their mother, their uncle, their grandma, or their grandpa, has dementia. And we keep thinking it's just the aging process, and they're watching us deteriorate as time goes on. And unless they're living with you, they probably don't realize that that your life has changed dramatically. And so rather than go to the doctor and say, do I have Alzheimer's disease, they just write it off as getting older. And many physicians write it off as you're just getting older, don't worry about it. Well, we had medications that came out that would take you back 6 months. If you, meaning what you were like 6 months ago. When you start to look at when the deterioration was taking place, taking an individual back 6 months isn't really going to change that person very much, and it doesn't always work. And they have side effects: diarrhea, dryness of the mouth, lots of side effects with those medications. And we keep having hope, and so we keep buying medications and thinking that they will improve, and because that's what is supposed to happen with the marketing on these medications, and it doesn't happen. And I have told many people, it's certainly up to you and your loved one. Maybe that's why I don't do as many prescriptions as I used to, because I tell people if it's not effective or the risk is is greater than the benefit, then I wouldn't do that anymore. I don't want people to take everything that they can take in order so they can live longer if they have no quality effect. So be aware that these are difficult times, and aging isn't a fun thing for many people. You need to stay as active as you can. If we're one of the unfortunate people who that disease decides to master, then we won't know the difference, but our loved ones certainly will. And it's important to recognize those things as you continue to take care of yourself, as you enter that place where you have less years left, certainly, than you had prior, and you try to stay as healthy as you can. And that's why I tell people you have to be the people that are taking care of your health. You have to know. I have a relative of mine that's 49 years old, and he was told there was nothing wrong with his heart, and he has since found out that he needs an ablation at 49 years old. And in the first place he went, said, there's nothing wrong. Just go back to work. There's nothing wrong with you. I have a relative that is in a camp right now and probably has a torn lateral meniscus, and it's boot camp. So my experience in the military was I was 245 pounds. So they were, and I was in Fort Campbell, Kentucky with the 101st Airborne, and I was told, you have to lose weight if you're going to continue in the military. So they ran me until I would pass out, and then they would throw water on me and run me again until I passed out. I eventually ended up in the hospital with a form of herpes stomatitis, herpetic stomatitis, and the whole digestive tract all the way down was full of blisters. And I lost weight all right. I got down to 165 pounds, lost 80 pounds, and was very ill. So, and that was back in the days when healthcare was much different. So I just want to remind you that you have to be the responsible one for your health. You're the one that needs to shape up. You're the one that needs to exercise. You're the one that has to evaluate the risks and whether or not you want to get the benefit out of taking it if the benefits are bigger than the risk. So I want to remind you that we still have our gift sale going on. Come by Bruno's, and we have 25 to 30% off on gifts. Still doing immunizations, still doing free deliveries in Lakeport and Kelseyville and Upper Lake and Nice, Lucerne, the Rivieras, and that we're there for you. We know that a lot of you experience polypharmacy, and you're going to different pharmacies, including mail order and the regulation pharmacies, and we'd like to have your business and take care of all your medications for you. I'd like to remind you we're North Lake Medical Pharmacies with 2 locations for you at 5136 Hill Road East across from Sutter Lakeside Hospital. Call us there at 263-6192 or outside the Bruno Shop Smart at 347 Lakeport Boulevard. Give us a call there at 263-1328. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Bill, and we'll see everybody back here again next Wednesday at 10 a.m. for Health Talk on AM 1270 and 96.5 FM KXBX Lakeport.